Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk About Houses. I'm Todd.
I'm Juana.
So if you've been watching our videos for a while, we normally talk about super boring stuff like housing market, and we talk about whether it's going to crash or whether it's a bubble, or we do market updates or things like that. But we're going to talk about something kind of fun today.
Okay.
And this is something that is not going to happen very quickly, but it is going to happen, and it potentially is going to affect real estate and how we live our lives. This is the adoption of two new technologies that are coming along. One are fully self-driving vehicles, autonomous vehicles. Mm-hmm. The other are the EVTOLs. They're electronic vertical takeoff landing aircraft. And the specific thing that we're going to sort of talk about today is how are they going to affect real estate? Meaning, let's go back historically. Okay. Historically, you have the city center.
Right.
And the city center was where everyone lived because you physically couldn't, everyone had to work in the city, everyone had to live within close distance, right? Mm-hmm. And there were usually pockets in the city that were not desirable, they stuck people there. And then eventually people, the first thing that happened in the US and in Europe were trains.
Right.
And with trains, people could get in and out of the city. So what happened was you basically developed suburbs. Mm-hmm. People could live out of the city. They could get on a train, come into the city, do their business work, get on the train, go back. There's actually a famous example of a guy who lived in Pasadena and back this is in the, I think in the 20s maybe, or it was a long time. I think it was in the 20s, but it might have been the late 1800s. And he had a business in downtown LA, but he didn't like downtown LA because it was a dirty city, right? But he loved living out in Pasadena. Now, today you can drive in a car, but back then they didn't really have cars. So
okay, this is LA. They can't drive in a car because they don't go anywhere.
Yeah, they don't go anywhere. So what happened was he built a railway. So he could basically commute in on a rail train into the city. He built a rail train. We'll have to find out and get more details on it. Okay. The other thing that happened was mass adoption of vehicles. Mm-hmm. Because mass adoption of vehicles, remember, if you're traveling by rail, that's great if you're in New York City, but everywhere else, like Chicago maybe, but everywhere else you don't have that option.
Well, and not only that, but if you're traveling by rail, again, everybody's congregated around the rail line, but not too far from that, because getting transportation to and from the rail line was not necessarily the easiest thing in the world.
If you look at a map of Chicago and look at the suburbs, all the cities are on the rail lines because there's like 8 or 12 rail lines that come out of the city on Metra. They go to all the outskirts. They go north, west, south, and all that. And all the cities are on those lines. They're all like dots on the lines, right?
So, your story reminds me of a story of the guy in Florida. He connected all the keys with a rail line.
And he put the hotels.
Right. He did the same thing.
He built his own rail line down to Key West from like Tallahassee. Mm-hmm. And then he put hotels at all the stops that he owned. And it was a fascinating story. But anyway, so that changed how that allowed, the vehicles allowed suburbs and allowed people. And then they left the cities and the cities became dumps. Right. And then what happened was people recognized the value of living in a city. Mm-hmm. And developers came in and what is called gentrification. The rich came back to the cities and pushed out all the poor people.
I like redevelopment, but okay.
And then where did the poor people go? Just outside the city. So now you have these rings of, literally, if you could look at any U.S. city, you either want to live in the middle of the city in a high rise, or you want to live kind of outside the city. But if you go like 2 miles outside that area there, is usually very industrial. Okay, now, that model hasn't changed in 50 or 60 years, if not more, of people living in suburbs. People live in every place. I don't care where you live in the U.S. and even in a lot of Europe now. People live in the suburbs, right? More people live in the suburbs than anywhere in the U.S. So what is going to happen now as instead of you picked your suburb because you didn't want to drive 2 hours into the city, right? So you're in a near suburb that's near to the city, right? You're in Brooklyn because you can just take the train into the city, but you're not in the city, you're just in Brooklyn, right? But now you can take an EVTOL that gets you there cheaper than the train faster than the train, and you can now live much further away, or, which is more likely to happen sooner, electric vehicles fully self-driving, meaning a vehicle pulls up in front of the house, you jump in, and it drives you right to your office and drops you off the curb. It alleviates you from having to either drive or be dropped off at the train line and take the train into the city. So EVTOLs, I think, is the most interesting thing, even though they're not predicted to be mass used until 2040. But I think these potentially could change that balance again between where people live, because I believe they will be super cheap, and it will open up where you can live.
I agree with you. I think that certainly in the short term, I see them being more being used for less frequent travel. So something like taking you to the airport or something like that. I don't see them being used necessarily for commuting. Short term. And long term, that's a different story. And as far as the self-driving, I think the self-driving is a really interesting thing, because the self-driving, and with it being affordable enough, would it change the way, in particular, Americans, because that's really what we're talking about, is the U.S. market more than anywhere else, because we are, I think, the most dependent on personal vehicles than any other country in the world. I think the self-driving is going to open up a very interesting thing. It's going to change, I think, the way we own vehicles, whether or not we own multiple vehicles. So let me give you an example. Most of us, so a couple would have two vehicles. He would have one and she would have one. But with self-driving, would they still have two vehicles, or would they have one vehicle where one vehicle takes her to this location, then drops her off, comes back, picks him up, and takes him somewhere to his location, goes back and picks her up, and so on.
Takes the kids to school.
Right. Right. So I think you're going to see, with the self-driving, you're going to see a shift in the number of vehicles we own. So keep in mind, if you're a family and you've got teenagers, then they probably maybe each have a car. So now maybe you've got 3 or 4 cars in the family, and maybe you wouldn't need 3 or 4 cars. Maybe 1 or 2 cars would do the job. So I think that's going to be an interesting shift as well. So not just in housing, but in that. Now, and with the reduction of vehicles, so if we go from a 4-vehicle family to a 2-vehicle family, do we still need as many car garages? What does that look like? How does housing itself change? I think those are interesting things to ponder as we go forward with all of this.
If you look at homes built over 100 years ago, they did not have garages.
Right.
So what they did was, behind the house in the backyard, they built a garage, and they made a new thing called a driveway. It's how you drive into the garage. You drive a driveway, a way to get into the garage, and they would park in the back behind the house.
Or the other thing that they would do is they had the service road behind the house. I've lived in places where we had the service road behind the house, where, like, for example, the trash truck went. So if you wanted to park, you would come down the service road, and your garage would be back there. There was no driveway from the front of the house to the back. So they did different things to accommodate this.
A lot of that was because they couldn't necessarily just rechange the drives. They couldn't really add them, or the houses were designed to be closer together, so you really didn't have room. And we see this in a lot of communities where they have the garage in the back, or people just park on the streets, right? And then, of course, is lots got smaller. They had to physically attach the garage to the house, and the best design is it has to be the first thing, because you don't want to have to drive through your whole yard to get to the garage. You want to drive up there. So what's going to change is, what are they going to do with all these, I have to have a 3-car garage when everybody has fully autonomous vehicles, or you don't even have a vehicle. You don't need a vehicle. Why would you need a vehicle? If you need a ride, you open up the app and go, hey, I got to be at work tomorrow at this time. And there's just, tens of thousands of vehicles parked that are fully electric and fully self-driving that just go, and by the time you get, can grab your briefcase and get to the door or whatever, the car pulls up.
Right.
And you get in it, it whisks you off, and then drops you off, and then you can say, hey, I'm going to be done about this time or whatever. I think this is going to be very interesting. So with the electric vehicles, they're very cheap. Here's an interesting tidbit that I heard.
Okay.
So as you know, Tesla has 4 cars that they currently produce.
Right.
The S, the 3, the X, and the Y.
Right.
Right? And then the Cybertruck's coming next.
Coming soon.
Okay. There is a rumor that the next car Tesla will design will have no steering wheel.
Well, they already
or brake
have
pedals.
Right. So they already have that in China. They already have vehicles that are out in service that do not have steering
Right.
wheels, do not have any capacity for occupants to physically drive the vehicle.
Yeah. So if that happens, chances are they'll probably sell them to individuals, or they'll basically sell them to companies who buy them and say, hey, we want to buy 50,000 of your things because we're going to create our own autonomous network of vehicles where people can, we'll have a network. You can buy into our network if you're in this city, and
Right.
You pay so much a month, and you just download the app, and then you just get rides.
And you're going to have choices between going into work by yourself or going into work along with other people. Kind of the new iteration of carpooling where it picks you up and it goes 2 miles down the road on the way to your office and picks up somebody else.
Just like Uber and Lyft do that already.
Right.
They haven't done it since the pandemic.
Right, but before that, they were doing it. Yeah.
One was called Lyft Line or something.
I don't remember.
And then Uber was Share Uber. Remember what it was called?
I don't remember. But the point is that they've already experimented with that, and it does work. And certainly doing that with an autonomous vehicle makes a lot of sense. Autonomous vehicles are going to be able to communicate with each other, so it's going to lessen, hopefully, traffic jams. Less people on the road if you're carpooling, again, lessening traffic jams. You're going to see, I think, a change in vehicle ownership. Like I said before, as families, we're going to probably own less vehicles. As families, we're going to choose housing that maybe has a different accommodations for a different number of vehicles than what we choose now. So for example, if you have chosen a house that has a 3 or 4 car garage because of the way your family situation is, and maybe you've got extra parking for whatever vehicles you've got, you might make a different choice going forward.
Yep.
So all of this impacts housing. It impacts where we live. What are we going to do with the garages when we no longer use them? Will we convert them to what?
Livable space.
To livable space.
Very common
Right.
in Las Vegas. There's a lot of houses that they just converted the garages. This is not a good market for that because you need to park. You park. If not, your car's parked outside.
Right, and so the same way that you don't want to park your car outside if you live in Michigan in the winter, you probably don't want to park your car outside in Las Vegas in the summer. Same kind of reasons: extreme weather, uncomfortable. Maybe in a cold weather climate, in the winter you go outside, you turn your car over, and you run back inside while it warms up. We kind of do the same thing here in Vegas. We go outside in the summertime, we turn the car over, let it come back inside while it cools off, and then go back outside. So same kind of principle.
When I was a kid in San Diego, before we moved to Las Vegas, we had a very small house built in the 40s or 50s. That was a 3-car garage, or it was a 2-car garage, was the 3-bedroom house. And my parents basically they closed the garage door and cut a little single door into it. So you could go in and out through a single, like a swing normal door. And then they carpeted it, put a couch in there, put a piano in there, put a pool table, and turned it into like extra living space. They actually physically removed the door from the garage to the house, so you just walked through. You didn't have a door to close. The door was physically removed, but we just parked outside. We either parked in the driveway or on the street because it's San Diego. I mean, the hottest it ever gets is 80 on a heat wave, and it never gets ridiculously cold. And it's kind of ridiculous to have park inside, but it added like more living space because I probably spent more time in that converted garage, mainly because the piano was in there. And I played piano, and then my toys were in there. And then there was a TV set in there too, and I watched TV in there.
Okay.
So I was like in there all the time in the garage. Now the other thing is VTOL, because these EVTOLs, like Juana said, at first it's going to be a novelty where you land at JFK and you walk over the EVTOL pad, And instead of paying $75, which I think is the going rate for an Uber or taxi into the city, for $20 you jump into EVTOL, and instead of an hour to get into the city, it takes 15 minutes, and it drops you off at a building somewhere where you either can then Uber where you want to go, get on the train, but it alleviates the thing of you having to sit in traffic and pay a ton of money.
Right. Much
faster. There are already companies that are built that are going to deploy these. Joby is one of them. Archer's another one. Right now, they do have helicopter service into the city, but it's very expensive.
Right.
But remember, these eVTOLs are not helicopters. They're far cheaper because of the design. They don't have this massive motor. They're not super heavy. They're a lot lighter. They're all fully electric, unlike helicopters, which are all still gas. They make a ton of noise. And these things will eventually be fully autonomous.
Right. And, the idea is that these VTOLs are going to be able to land on top of parking garages throughout a metropolitan area. So they're much more accessible to everybody rather than just to people who have access to helipads on top of skyscrapers.
So here's in theory how this would work, okay? You land at JFK and you say, I need to go to the Sheraton Times Square. And the VTOL, it says go to parking garage 3, and you walk across the thing and up the elevator, and you're on the top of parking garage 3. Parking garages are all in the middle of all the terminals there. It would be the same in like O'Hare, right? You have parking right in the middle there. You go in San Francisco, it's the same thing. You go to the top of the parking garage, you go to pad 3. Pad 3, you walk up there, and this VTOL comes and lands, and you jump in it. Now, you're in it with, let's say, there's 4 people in it. There's you and there's 3 other people. And it's taking you to the same helipad in the city because you've all selected locations that are relatively close to say Times Square, right? So it goes near Times Square and lands, and either gets you close enough to walk or close enough to where you can take an Uber. And if you need an Uber or a ride share or something like that, it already knows. So what it says is, hey, we're going to land at exactly this time. Have a car ready. There's a person that needs to go, 15 blocks to this thing. So it pulls up, it lands, you walk out, your ride is there, you jump in it, it drives you the other 13 blocks. And maybe it's fully autonomous too.
Right.
It may not know this, but Uber now operates in New York City. And it's also, an agreement they made was it had to be tied to the cabs. So when you request an Uber, you may get a regular cab.
Okay.
Because they're all on Uber now, but they're allowed to have Uber in there. So you're gonna see these, and this is gonna change how people live, not just how we travel, but it'll change real estate because it'll change. I foresee in 100 years us not having 3-car garages. I think they're gonna laugh at the fact that people, why did they need these 3-car garages?
I think it's gonna be less than 100 years. I think it's gonna be within our lifetime.
Within our lifetime, so less than 100 years. And I think it's gonna affect where people live.
Yes. Agreed. Yeah, I think we're going to have more choices, and more choices are good. It'll help with density. Look, in the U.S., certainly it's a big country, and most of it's not populated. So the idea that we can spread out a little more and have a little more space, maybe a little more serenity, away from noise and away from the hustle and bustle of metropolitan areas. I think that's a good thing. It's a healthy thing.
Yeah.
And anytime that we have choices, those are good things too. So I think it'll allow for a shift in where we live, and that obviously also creates a shift in the social structure. So it'll be interesting to see how this develops and how this impacts all of our lives and changes the way we live.
The other thing too is, one of the reasons to not have people work in cities is because they don't want to live in the cities for whatever reason. So they want to live in the suburbs, but now it's easier to get into the city. If you have a cheap way to get there that's safe and that is pretty quick.
Well, not only that, but these are also environmentally sound ways of getting into the city. So we're not polluting ourselves with these modes of transportation, which is also a plus. It improves air quality in the cities, because now you're not having as many fossil fuel vehicles in the city, so that's a good thing. So there are lots of pluses with this new technology, and particularly, obviously, not having a reduction in the number of vehicles by using rideshare. I think that's that's a plus. Less congestion, that's a plus. All kinds of really good things. So it's exciting to see how the future unfolds in front of all of us. Tell us what you think about all of this. We're interested. This is something that fascinates us. So please leave us comments. How do you envision the future unfolding with these types of vehicles? Is this something that you would want to use? Yes or no? And tell us the reason. Please like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the video, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.
Bye.